You may also have to do some basic factoring, and there are some techniques that you may or may not remember. The first rule of any kind of factoring is to pull out a common term, which we did look at in simplifying. So if you in the past had something that was 5x plus 25, you pulled out a 5 and you got x plus 5. So that was the first rule that we had. Now, the second rule in factoring is to count your terms, and we had different things that could happen if we count our terms and we have two terms and there's nothing we can pull out and there's nothing else we can do to it, then we might be finished. But if you pull something out and you get two things on each end that have square roots and it's subtraction, then this is a difference of squares. And in order to factor this, if you'll remember this from previous things you've done, you took the square root of both of them and you put those in two sets of parentheses. Then you put a plus in one and a minus in the other. And what you're doing is you're breaking this apart so that if we were to go back and put it back together, we would actually end up with what we started with. So if I add that, I get, this cancels and I get x squared minus 16. So that's what we're doing with the difference of squares. So anytime you have two things on each end that are like that, you're going to split them apart. So the way this relates to trig is you may see something that looks like this. You may see sine squared theta minus cosine squared theta. And you may be asked to simplify it, and you would need to recognize that those two things have square roots. The square root of sine squared is sine, and the square root of cosine squared is cosine. And in order to split it apart, you would take the square root of both of them, put a plus and a minus, and this would be factored. So it would look like that. So sometimes you do need to be able to split something apart in order to simplify it. And if I were to multiply that back out, I'd get sine times sine is sine squared. Sine times minus cosine is minus sine cosine. This one is plus sine cosine, and then minus cosine squared. So it would, if I multiplied it out, I would end up with what I started with. So you need to be able to go back and forth with those.